one here, there's only 4 left.
Yeah, and it looks like it's missing a lot of pieces. Like I'm seeing at the back of the engine on this one, it's missing the spinner. 6 turning and 4 burning. It's got 10 engines. The largest mass-produced aircraft ever. The longest wingspan of any combat aircraft ever. And these little jet engines were only used for takeoff, and they didn't even start them up till they got to the end of the runway. And they were also used for speed during the run in to the target. And these go in there. Oh yeah, there's a high for sure. There's a B going in that one. But these are little doors. These open up. They open up. They're closed right now, which is their cruise flight configuration. And these big giant engines, they really don't have very much air opening into them. They're so big. It's just so big. Oh, door open on this one. Sure looks dirty. And there's your exhaust. Holy smokes, the prop almost comes down here. If it was swinging, if they had a blade in the bottom position, it would be down. It would be down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Way into where the people are. I think I read the blade diameter is 17 feet. I could be wrong. But they didn't really... They put the engines at the back of the wing in order for them to not... so the propellers wouldn't disrupt the airflow over the wing. And this is this aircraft right here, believe it or not, is a reconnaissance aircraft. It was for taking pictures of the ground. And the reason they used this airplane is because it held a camera that had a focal length of 28 feet. This was the only airplane that could pick up that camera. And I can see it's got some bizarre door thingy here. And the rear compartment of the airplane here, this is the crew rest quarters back here, and also the galley. There's a little kitchen in there. And this is where the crew came to eat their meals. And this one has got the bomb bay doors open. You want to walk under the tail? Because that is big. So many rivets. Forever. What could these vents be? They're huge. There's got a big dent in it too. How'd they get that? Those are pretty big vents for just a cook. They just don't look right. They're so big. Maybe there has to be like an engine back here that heats it or something. This is just so big. And we are at Castle Air Museum on the old Strategic Air Command base in Atwater, California. Base has been closed down for a long time. But it's a great museum. They have got a lot of stuff. And there's only 4 of these airplanes. Convair B36, there's only 4 of them. I wonder what this is. Some kind of flying bomb. But you can go right under this sucker. And you can see the tube over here is where the crew, this is where the crew went from the front to the back. And apparently they laid down on these little sleds, and there was a rope along the ceiling of it, and they pulled them. So it's really quite a long distance. But it was this was a pressurized airplane, and it was the back compartment was pressurized, and the front compartment was pressurized, and in here was not. And these are the hangars where a rack of bombs would be on. But like I said, this airplane was a reconnaissance airplane, so there would have been something else in here. I'm trying to figure out what this center section is. Let's have a look at some things here. The door mechanism. That's pretty cool. There's something electronic has been removed from where all those things were hanging. But this, gosh, it looks like a bridge inside here with steel, just the rigging of how it's holding the spar down here. But this is the center wing spar box. It's just a million rivets. Wow. Bomb rack receptacle. And this netting is just for birds. Keep the birds out. Did a pretty good job. And this would be an atomic bomb, actually. It's a very large atomic bomb. And they actually made a whole ton of these things just for training. So they could, it's a Mark 17 thermonuclear bomb. And this bomb casing was found on the Edwards Air Force Base test range. It was found out on the test range. That's excellent. It was excavated and exposed by the 95th Air Base Wing Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit at Edwards Air Force Base. It is due to their efforts that this important Cold War artifact is now on display at the Castle Air Machine. And it is, they just kind of found this. It is like this huge chunk of steel. And they had a parachute on the back. That this whole back section was actually a parachute, and I've seen pictures of these things, and every one of these is a big rope going back to a parachute that I think is 48 feet in diameter. That can slow this thing down to give the plane time to get away. And wow, they got one of everything over here. F-15, F-16, F-18, CF-101, 105. Oh. Is that a 2-seat starfighter back there? 104? This airplane was a reconnaissance aircraft. It had cameras. And this one, they're side looking. So that means they were flying down the edge of a country. And look, it's got a kind of a little door that comes down. I wonder if we can do that in flight. I don't think it can. Oh yes, it can. It's got a little cable-y thing. And that was one camera right there. There's nothing in behind that. It's empty. And then the other one seems to be up here, the bigger one. And that is definitely a door that opens up. And that is a pretty big looking lens. Looks like the operator's got a little hatch up there and some kind of a latching thing down here. This plane is so huge. I call this the nuclear bomber. And the reason I call it the nuclear bomber is because, oh, there's some really neat things I got to tell you about this airplane. This landing gear was designed. The first landing gear that they had for this thing, it was a single wheel airplane, and it was the largest aircraft tire ever built, and it was 9 feet. There was a single tire, and it was 9 feet tall, and it went up into that area, and there was even a bump on the top of the wing. It was so big, and basically it didn't work. So they had it going, but they designed this, and so the modern bogie aircraft tire system that we know today came from this aircraft trying to figure things out with landing gear. Sure would like to know. This is a rascal. It is a jet bomb. This is also thick, all the casings here. Oh, and it's hollow. That's quite interesting. That is quite interesting. Right to the top of the wing, you can see through there. Right to the top of the wing. Oh, the back of the wing spar. Apparently, behind that wing spar, in that box, there's a catwalk, and dudes could walk in flight to the back of these engines and add oil or something. Apparently they could get to the back of these engines. So I call this the atomic bomber because this is the aircraft, and I have photos of them putting in a new cockpit, and America decided that they should have test results on what would happen if you flew around in an airplane with a nuclear reactor inside the aircraft operating. And my gosh, the only airplane they could choose was the B36 because it was the biggest one they had. So they actually did it. And I have photographs of them putting a cockpit section in, and they made a whole new section to put in that was lead lined, and it was a 24,000 pound, it weighed 12 tons, and they put it on this thing. I imagine there was another compartment for where the dudes operating the reactor were, because the reactor would have been back here somewhere near the wing. And the amazing thing about the program is the aircraft flew 47 times. So I think after 47 times, somebody said, hey, you guys are taking a really big risk. Stop doing that. And thankfully they did, before we all heard more about it. This thing's so huge, I can't believe it. The flap. Is that a flap? I think it's a flap section right there. And from front to back, it's like 12 feet, 10 feet long or so. It's huge. Things were patches all over the place. And that would be a hatch at the bottom of the fuel tank with that massive stain coming out of it. I'm guessing that's a panel that could be removed for access to the fuel tank. Interesting. And like I said, this aircraft came here, I think it came here on a train. I think it was like 22 rail cars, and I've seen pictures of it. And they built it right here, right where it's sitting right now is where this thing got built. And it didn't move from right here. They built it, rebuilt it, reassembled it right here. The aircraft was actually built in Fort Worth, Texas. And when they first built these things, there was only 3 runways in the United States that could carry their weight. And they only flew them for 10 years. And then they sort of got obsolete in a big hurry.
Adorable how they did that.
This is museum humor. They've got themselves a stealth fighter.
That is awesome.
This is museum humor right here. They have a stealth fighter. It's right here. Got a pretty good stealth job on it, eh? Yeah. they welded the little chains up. That's pretty funny. I like it. Big refueler.